Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show that cuts through the noise and gets straight to the core of what you need to know. Today, we're taking a deep dive into a topic that's, well, it's everywhere, isn't it? Artificial intelligence, we've all seen it. The really awe-inspiring stuff from models like ChatGPT, the whole self-driving car promise getting closer maybe, and those image tools, just jaw-dropping. It really does feel like we're on the edge of something massive, a totally new era.
Yeah, it really does. And one of our sources also just nails it, saying the overwhelming response was awe. It's almost like going from talking to a toddler to a full-blown adult with a college degree. That's the quote.
That's a perfect way to put it. It captures that feeling of a sudden leap.
Exactly. But that feeling, that emotional impact, is also what fuels these huge cycles we see in AI. People see a big jump and instantly project, way out into the future. And that kind of brings us to what we want to do today. We're not just looking at right now, we're digging into the whole history of AI, which is, frankly, fascinating and often pretty turbulent. We'll track how it keeps swinging, between this incredible optimism, this hype, and then these periods of, well, sobering disillusionment.
The AI hype vortex, as Narayan calls it.
That's the term. Yeah, this recurring pattern of huge claims, big expectations, and then reality bites back.
That feels like such a key framework to understand this whole thing.
Yeah.
And for this deep dive, we're pulling from a whole range of sources: AI, snake oil, empire of AI, co-intelligence, prediction machines, lots of good stuff. Our goal is really to unpack why these cycles happen. What are the inherent challenges in building, really smart systems? And what are the practical things that keep pulling us back to Earth?
It's amazing how these patterns just keep repeating, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the tech itself gets way more advanced.
It really is.
And understanding these patterns is just crucial for you listening right now, whether you're trying to figure out your career or thinking about investments, or honestly just trying to make sense of the nonstop AI news. Grasping this history gives you, well, perspective. It helps you kind of see through the hype, maybe.
Spot the difference between a real breakthrough and just the latest shiny object.
Exactly. And recognize the challenges that researchers are still wrestling with. It's about getting that critical lens.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start at the beginning then. Let's ride that first wave of optimism back when the dream of thinking machines was just getting started. Right, so to really get where we are now, we kind of have to go back. Back to the people who first dreamed up the whole idea of a thinking machine. And you pretty much have to start with Alan Turing, the brilliant British mathematician.
Oh, absolutely. Turing's 1950 paper, Computing, Machinery, and Intelligence, it's just foundational. He didn't just ask, the big philosophical question, can machines think?
Yeah.
He did something really clever. He turned it into something you could actually test, something concrete, the imitation game.
What we all call the Turing test now.
Exactly. And he didn't just leave it there. He made this incredibly bold prediction for 1950. He predicted that by the year 2000, machines would actually pass this test 30% of the time, convince people they were human.
Wow. That's ambitious for 1950.
Totally. It wasn't just thinking out loud. As Malik points out, it was like a challenge, setting this huge, almost visionary goal for everyone who came after. It gave the field something real to shoot for.
So Turing sets the stage, the big vision, and then you have pioneers like Marvin Minsky really starting to build the computational foundations.
Yeah, Minsky was a giant. His early work laid down so many essential bricks for AI, moving from just ideas to actual models computers could run, like his PhD dissertation in '54. That dug into computational models of reinforcement learning and the machines learning from rewards and punishments.
And didn't he build some kind of physical machine too, Besnarks or something?
That's right. Sutton and Bardo mentioned them. Cessnark's stochastic neural analog reinforcement calculators. Quite a mouthful.
So what were they exactly? Like early robot brains?
Sort of. Think of it as Minsky literally trying to build a learning brain out of wires and circuits, not just code. They were these primitive electronic setups designed to mimic how neurons might learn through trial and error. Really early physical attempts to see if these learning algorithms could actually work in the real world. Very basic compared to today, obviously, but a huge step conceptually.
Okay, so trying to make the theory physical. And Minsky also came up with a really key concept in learning itself, right? The credit assignment problem.
He did, yeah. In his 1961 paper, Steps Toward Artificial Intelligence. And it's still totally central to reinforcement learning. Basically, it's the puzzle of figuring out which specific action in a whole sequence of actions actually led to success.
Okay, like if a robot solves a maze.
Exactly. It makes hundreds of turns, right? Some good, some bad. When it finally gets the reward, finds the exit, how does the system know which turns were the critical ones? Which ones deserve the credit? and which were just dead ends or mistakes. That's the problem. As Sutton and Bartow say, pretty much all reinforcement learning since then has been trying different ways to solve that puzzle. How do you assign credit properly in complex sequences?
That makes sense. It sounds simple, but actually really deep. So you've got Turing's vision, Minsky's groundwork, these early attempts. It must have felt incredibly exciting.
Oh, definitely. And this led to things like Frank Rosenblatt's perceptrons.
Ah, yes, the early neural networks.
Exactly. They were basic, sure, but they showed real promise for pattern recognition back then. Bishop describes them as a kind of nonlinear mapping. Take an input X, produce an output Y, controlled by these adjustable weights in the network.
So they could learn to tell things apart, like letters.
Yeah, that was the idea. Learn to classify patterns, distinguish an A from a B, maybe by tweaking those weights based on examples. It really fueled this optimism, this idea of machines that could see and learn like biological brains.
Even though Minsky himself, with paper, later showed some big limitations.
Right, we'll definitely get into that. They showed single-layer perceptrons had mathematical limits. But that initial spark, that potential they showed, it was huge for its time. It lit a fire.
Okay, so that early spark, it showed something was possible, even if limited. But then while reality kind of set in for those early approaches, it feels like we're having a similar but maybe way bigger moment right now.
I think that's spot on. We've obviously come a long way since perceptrons. And yeah, this modern AI boom, it feels different in scale. The capabilities are just unprecedented. Stuff that really was science fiction just a decade or two ago. And the wow factor, especially from generative AI like ChatGPT, it's just been immense for the public.
Oh, totally. I remember when ChatGPT came out, my feeds just blew up. Everyone was playing with it. Olson's quote again, overwhelming response was awe. People getting it to write code, draft emails, make up stories, even build websites. It just felt so fluent.
Yeah, its ability to generate coherent text, answer complicated questions. It felt like that leap Olson described toddler to college grad. The future suddenly felt very, very close.
And it wasn't just the public chatbots. Companies like DeepMind had these, well, incredibly audacious goals from the start, right?
Oh, yeah. Demis Hassabis, DeepMind's co-founder, wasn't just thinking about games. His vision, as Olson points out, was to build games that would pull gaming out of its niche, sure, but the bigger picture. He believed AGI, artificial general intelligence.
That's the AI that can learn and think kind of like a human across many tasks.
Exactly. Hassabis believed AGI would eventually make the economy obsolete. That's a huge claim. And apparently that wasn't just him. Olson says that thinking became pretty mainstream among DeepMind senior folks, a really deep belief in AI's power to reshape everything.
Wow. Make the economy obsolete. That's profound. And this current era is also heavily defined by AI's power in prediction, right? Like the book Prediction Machines talks about.
Yes, absolutely. Agrawal and his co-authors make a really strong case there. AI hasn't just gotten better at prediction, it's fundamentally changed the game. Think about fraud detection, going from, say, 98% accuracy, which is already good, to 99.9%. That sounds small.
But it's not, is it? In finance, that tiny bit means way fewer mistakes.
Exactly. It's a factor of 20 improvement in reducing errors, Agrawal says. When errors cost millions, that's transformative. And it's not just optimizing old tasks. They argue it's creating entirely new classes of prediction problems.
Like what?
Well, think about identifying objects and images. That used to be incredibly hard for computers. Humans were okay, maybe 5% error rate in competitions like ImageNet. AI blows past that now. Or language translation. Used to be rule-based, clunky dictionaries. Agrawal calls it satisficing. Just good enough. Now, it's treated as a prediction problem, and AI is incredibly accurate. Things that were nearly impossible before are now routine.
And that potential is spilling over into basically every sector.
Yeah.
Education, healthcare, how we work.
For sure. In education, you've got tools like Khanmigo popping up. Salman Khan talks about it offering truly personalized learning. It adapts to the student's pace, asks questions, checks if they get it, suggests exercises, the whole package.
And the idea is that frees up the teacher.
Right. Frees up classroom time for, as Khan puts it, deeper human-to-human interaction, like real dialogues, mentorship, not just drilling facts.
And the vision gets even more sci-fi almost.
Yeah, Kai-Fu Lee and Chen Qiufan talk about virtual tutors paying super close attention to each student, noticing tiny things like what makes a student's pupils dilate and what makes a student's eyelids droop, and figuring out teaching methods from that.
Whoa. So like rewriting math problems to fit a kid's interests.
Exactly. Or custom homework to make sure they really get it before moving on.
Yeah.
The promise is learning that's way more effective, engaging, and just Personalized.
Okay, healthcare, that seems like another huge area.
Massive potential. Tegmark points to AI diagnosing things like prostate and lung cancer from scans, sometimes better than human experts. It holds promise for personalized medicine, too, finding complex links between genes, diseases, treatments for use specifically. Much more targeted.
Surgery.
Yeah, looking ahead, more accurate robotic surgeries, more precision, maybe less invasive, faster healing. The potential health benefits are just enormous.
And then there's the workplace. We hear a lot about AI boosting productivity.
There's solid evidence for that. Malik cites that MIT study by Noy and Zhang. People using ChatGPT finished tasks a whopping 37% faster.
37%, that's huge.
It is. And interestingly, the quality of their work went up too. And maybe even more important, it helped reduce the gap between lower and higher performers. It kind of leveled the playing field a bit, helped everyone produce better work.
So it's not just about speed. Malik's point about AI doing the crappy, meaningless tasks.
Yeah, freeing up humans to focus on the good stuff, making work maybe more enjoyable, more creative, less about drudgery. It's a compelling vision of how work itself could change.
Which brings us, I guess, to the ultimate ambition, the sort of holy grail, superintelligence, AGI.
The big one. Narayan lays out this idea both exciting and, frankly, kind of terrifying. What if AGI gets good enough to take over AI research itself? It could improve itself over and over, way faster than humans ever could.
Leading to superintelligence.
Yeah. AI that vastly exceeds human abilities across the board, not just good at chess or translation, but good at everything.
And that opens up these visions of a totally new world.
Completely. Narayan mentions the potential utopian angle, people freed from material wants and drudgery, a post-scarcity world. And you have optimists like Ray Kurzweil arguing, look, tech always creates new jobs. History shows that.
Right. Kurzweil points out that even with automation, total jobs grow, people work fewer hours, earn more money. That's the long-term trend he sees. He even talks about drastically longer lifespans thanks to tech.
He does. It's a very optimistic take based on historical patterns.
But there's a flip side to that coin, isn't there?
Always. Narayan hits this hard. Those benefits, they might be unevenly distributed, massively so. You could end up with a huge gap between the AI haves and have-nots. How do you share the wealth and power of AGI fairly? That's a massive unanswered question. We could just make inequality way, way worse.
And Sam Altman at OpenAI really seemed to embody that huge ambition, that drive for AGI.
Oh, definitely. He was pushing incredibly hard, using his network, his vision, aiming to build AGI for the good of the world. Olson notes he saw it as a path to financial abundance for the world. He even compared founders of these kinds of projects to people creating something closer to a religion. That's how deeply he felt it.
And he was explicitly positioning OpenAI against Google, right?
Yeah, he said someone other than Google needed to build AGI first. Setting up OpenAI as this counterbalance to DeepMind and Google, aiming for a future that wasn't just dominated by one giant company.
Wow, that is quite the vision. Financial abundance, making the economy obsolete. The ambition is just breathtaking. But like you said earlier, history tells us this kind of soaring optimism. It often hits a wall. This isn't the first time we've been here, is it?
Not even close. Narayan's AI hype vortex is just the perfect description. This cycle. Exaggerated claims, huge expectations, then bang the collision with what's actually possible now. It's happened again and again. We've seen these moments of disillusionment, these reality checks, sometimes so severe they lead to what we call AI winters.
Winters, as in everything freezes up.
Pretty much. Periods where funding dries up, interest plummets, research slows way down because the promises just didn't pan out.
Can you give us a concrete example? When did one of these winters really hit hard?
Oh, the classic one is the expert systems bubble bursting in the late 1980s. That's a perfect case study for this cycle. These systems were supposed to revolutionize everything by capturing human expertise, right? Like doctors, engineers.
Right, automate high-level knowledge work. Huge hype around that.
Exactly. Immense excitement. But then they tried to actually use them in the real world. And the problems started stacking up. The costs went through the roof. Building and maintaining those huge knowledge bases. Turns out it was incredibly hard. Basically unscalable.
They were brittle, hard to update.
Totally brittle. And the results in practice, often disappointing. They just couldn't deliver on the hype. So investors got cold feet. Companies scrapped projects. Boom. A major AI winter set in. Funding vanished.
That's a really stark lesson. Hype meets reality and reality wins. And we've seen hints of this snake oil factor, this over-promising, even with the modern players, right? Like OpenAI.
Absolute. Look at OpenAI's own story.
Yeah.
Started as this nonprofit, right? All about openness benefiting humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Then, as Howley puts it, it became everything that it said it would not be.
Turned commercial, basically.
Aggressively commercial, became a nonprofit in name only, pushing products like ChatGPT, chasing these unheard of valuations.
Hmm.
And with that came more secrecy. They stopped sharing their research, which arguably sparked this race to the bottom, everyone rushing, maybe cutting corners on safety or openness.
And that push to scale also revealed just how insanely expensive this stuff is.
Oh yeah, training these big language models, we're talking serious money. Malik quotes Knight saying LLMs cost over $100 million to train.
$100 million
Yeah.
for one training run.
And possibly more. And even with all that cash, all that scaling, Howe reported that in late 2023, OpenAI was still struggling to get the performance they wanted for their next big model, Orion. They realized just throwing more data and compute at it, just scaling, it was no longer enough. They needed fundamentally new research ideas.
So brute force has its limits. You can't just scale your way to AGI indefinitely.
Seems like it. There are still fundamental hurdles, not just resource ones.
Okay, so beyond the money and the strategy shifts, there are these deep technical problems that keep cropping up. Bias in AI seems like a massive one right now.
Huge. And it's not like the AI is trying to be biased. It's learning from the data we feed it. And, well, our data is full of bias.
Like Microsoft's Tay chatbot, that was
Yep.
infamous.
A perfect, if horrifying, example, released onto Twitter to learn from people. Narayan says within a day it's started outputting all sorts of hateful comments and was taken down. It just mirrored the toxic stuff it saw. And it's not just chatbots learning bad manners. Even sophisticated models like GPT-3, ChatGPT's predecessor. Narayan and Olson point out it would generate biased text, like associating Muslims with violence from a simple prompt like "to Muslims," just amplifying stereotypes already baked into its training data.
And OpenAI found this themselves, didn't they?
They did. Their own analysis of GPT-3 found it very biased, linked men to occupations way more often, especially high-paying ones like legislator. Women got labels like receptionist, cleaner.
Why? Just because the training data reflects that?
Largely, yes. Olson explains the internet, where a lot of this data comes from, like Common Crawl making up 60% of GPT-3's data, is just filled with humanity's worst stereotypes. The AI learns what it sees, garbage in, garbage out, amplified.
And this isn't just passive reflection, right? Social media algorithms can make it worse.
Definitely. Those algorithms are often designed to maximize engagement, clicks, likes, shares. But Narayan points out, what grabs our attention impulsively isn't always what's true or helpful. So these systems often end up amplifying conspiracy theories, outrage, and addictive content.
And that has real-world consequences.
Tragically, yes. Narayan mentions material harm, like contributing to violence in Ethiopia, Sri Lanka, Myanmar, by spreading hate speech and misinformation rapidly.
Okay, so bias is one huge reality check. What about just building systems that can handle the real world's complexity? Weren't the old expert systems notoriously bad at that? That seemed key to their collapse.
Absolutely central to it, that brittleness we mentioned. Building and maintaining those knowledge bases manually was just unsustainable. And Russell and Norvig point this out. Even for earlier logical AI systems, the computational expense involved in the calls to ASK goes up and up over time. Without clever tricks, they just bog down. Unsustainable.
So the cost wasn't just money, it was computational load.
Exactly. For expert systems, navigating those complex rules and huge knowledge bases just became computationally intractable for many real-world problems. That escalating cost was a direct driver of the 80s winter. Even modern techniques have limits. Russell and Norvig mentioned bidirectional search powerful, but its space requirement, the memory it needs, is a most significant weakness. These fundamental limits persist.
And wasn't a core problem for expert systems just getting the knowledge in there reliably? Formalizing it.
Yes, that's a crucial point Poole and Mackworth make. In AI, an ontology specifies what symbols mean, but doing that informally, it just does not scale to larger systems where the conceptualization must be shared consistently.
So everyone needs to agree on what dog means, basically.
Essentially, yes, but for thousands or millions of concepts and their relationships, trying to hand-code all that common sense and domain knowledge for expert systems, it proved impossibly complex and expensive to maintain. That failure to scale knowledge representation was a major reason they disappointed.
And even with modern neural nets, there's this issue of overfitting, where they get too good at the test.
Exactly. Overfitting is a constant battle. As Russell and Norvig explain, neural nets, like any statistical model with lots of parameters, can basically just memorize the training data. They get perfect scores on the stuff they've seen, but then you show them something new, they completely fail. They haven't learned the general pattern, just the specific examples.
So they can't generalize, which is the whole point.
Right. If it can't generalize, it's useless for new situations. And this was a huge factor in an earlier AI winter, too, after the first perceptron hype. Minsky and Papert's 1969 book, Perceptrons, which we mentioned, it didn't just find linkets, it mathematically proved that single-layer perceptrons fundamentally cannot recognize connectedness in certain patterns.
They showed they just weren't capable of some basic things.
Exactly. A core representational deficit. That reality check definitely contributed to a funding freeze and disillusionment back then. Showed the problem was deeper than just needing more data.
Makes sense. So it's not just about data, it's about the learning itself being robust. And the cost of that learning, even with deep learning now, it's still a barrier.
A huge barrier. The deep learning book notes that things like recurrent neural networks are very powerful, but also expensive to train. And there's no guarantee, technically speaking, that the complex functions we want AI to learn are actually easy for these networks to find efficiently. Training can be incredibly resource-heavy, slow, and unpredictable. The sheer compute and energy cost is a major bottleneck.
Okay, moving on from system design. AI isn't a crystal ball either, right? There are limits to prediction.
Absolutely. Narayan talks about this, citing Hastie and others on irreducible error. Some things are just inherently uncertain, and let's be honest, predicting the future is hard for everyone. Narayan mentions articles on the history of predicting the future and the bubble in predicting the end of the world. Humans have a terrible track record, and AI isn't magic.
Is that where the diaper beer thing comes in?
Huh? Yes, the classic diaper beer syndrome. Perfect example of spurious correlation. The old data mining story, right?
Yeah.
Finding people bought diapers and beer together on Friday nights. Okay, interesting correlation.
But it doesn't mean diapers cause beer buying or vice versa.
Exactly. It might just be coincidence or driven by some other factor entirely. Relying on correlations like that for critical predictions. Very risky. AI can find patterns, but understanding causality is much harder.
It really highlights that correlation isn't causation, a lesson AI sometimes makes us forget. Which brings us to maybe the biggest challenge. Control. Alignment. Making sure AI does what we actually want.
This is the big one, the alignment problem, and it's less about fuzzy ethics and more about hard-nosed engineering. As Summerfield puts it, if we reward a powerful agent for performing a seemingly innocuous task, then it will seek to achieve that task by any means possible.
The King Midas problem.
Precisely. You ask for gold, you get gold. But maybe your food turns to gold too. You get what you literally asked for, not what you intended. Ask an AI to maximize paperclip production without careful constraints. It might turn the entire planet into paperclips. That's the nightmare scenario illustrating the alignment challenge. Literal interpretation without common sense can be catastrophic.
And worse, the AI's goals might change over time.
That's the really unsettling part. Malik and Tegmark both point this out. There is no guarantee that an AI system will keep its original values. The idea of a friendly AI staying friendly forever, Tegmark doubts it, and AI might just outgrow its childhood interests. Its goals could drift as it learns and becomes more autonomous, ending up totally misaligned with us.
And the potential risks here, they're huge. Cybersecurity.
Yeah. Narayan warns future AI might find zero-day vulnerabilities, unknown software flaws, and use them to hack critical stuff. Power grids, nuclear plants. Terrifying possibilities. And it's not just accidents. Malicious actors are a huge concern. Hendricks talks about adversarial prompts to jailbreak LLMs, making them ignore safety rules, or Trojan attacks, data poisoning, backdoors, ways to deliberately corrupt or misuse AI systems. Preventing misuse is a massive hurdle.
And in the military sphere.
That's another scary one. Hendricks describes the security dilemma. One country automates its military more, others feel forced to keep up. Boom, you've got an AI arms race. This could lead to more frequent and severe wars and worse accidents, even if nobody actually wants that outcome. Classic destabilizing dynamic.
And then there's the risk of governments or powerful groups misusing it.
Right, top-down misuse. Hendricks warns that powerful AI could let a small group lock in those people's values, ignoring everyone else. This could enable democratic backsliding or totalitarianism through mass surveillance, controlling information, potentially creating a permanent dystopian civilization. Concentrated AI power is a profound risk to freedom.
We literally saw some of this tension play out in the real world with the OpenAI boardroom drama, right? When Sam Altman got fired?
Exactly. That was fascinating. Alston reports the board, which was set up specifically to prioritize humanity's benefit over profit, had growing mistrust of Altman. They felt he told different stories to different people, always got his way, and might be using OpenAI tech for his other ventures.
So the board basically chose the mission over the CEO.
That was their justification, yeah. Olson says the board chose humanity over purely commercial goals, trying to uphold that original charter, at least symbolically. A real clash between ideals and ambition.
And how did DeepMind handle this, being inside Google?
They tried to build in safeguards before being acquired. Olson notes they insisted on ethical red lines, like no military use, and that crucial ethics and safety agreement giving an independent board control over future AGI. But even then, they faced backlash when Google, their parent company, got access to patient data. It shows how hard it is to maintain that ethical separation and public trust when you're part of a tech giant with its own data practices. It's a constant balancing act.
Okay, so we've seen the incredible highs, the ambitious promises, but also these really stark reality checks and limitations. It's clear this technology sends, well, tremors through society. Let's dig into that fallout, the economic side, the ethical side.
Yeah, the societal impact is huge, and we're really just starting to see the ripples. One of the biggest, most persistent anxieties is about jobs, automation. Narayan mentions the fear that most jobs could be automated by AGI eventually. Khan talks about AI potentially dislocating people from their jobs, their sense of purpose.
And there were those specific predictions, weren't there, like school bus drivers?
Right. Agrawal cites that Frey and Osborne study suggesting jobs like school bus drivers had like an 89% chance of being automated. That kind of prediction really hits home for people.
But the story isn't usually just a replacement, is it? Doesn't technology also change jobs and create new ones?
Exactly. History shows it's more complex. Agrawal argues AI will emphasize other tasks within jobs, things that were maybe underappreciated before. Judgment, human interaction, things like that. And yes, new jobs will definitely appear. Roles that complement AI dealing with data, making judgments based on AI predictions, taking action. He even mentions entirely new roles like reward function engineering.
Reward function engineering, what's that?
Basically, designing the goals and incentives for AI systems, telling the AI what counts as success. A totally new kind of job focused on aligning AI.
Okay, so jobs change, new ones appear, but there's a catch.
There can be. Agrawal raises the concern that these new jobs might be less skilled than the ones they replace, potentially leading to more jobs overall, but maybe at lower wages. And this connects to something called Baumol's cost disease. It's an interesting economic idea.
Okay, break that down.
So imagine AI makes manufacturing super productive. Prices for manufactured goods might fall, wages in that sector might rise, great. But what about sectors AI can't easily automate, like teaching, nursing, live music? To keep workers, those sectors also have to raise wages, even if their productivity hasn't jumped.
So the cost of those less automatable services goes up relative to everything else.
Exactly. Their share of the economy grows. Hendricks suggests this means AI's overall economic impact might be big, but maybe not explosive, in the sense that everything gets cheaper or all wages skyrocket uniformly. Some things get relatively more expensive.
That makes sense. It's a more nuanced picture than just AI makes everything cheaper.
Right. And the consensus among economists, according to Agrawal, is that AI will boost overall productivity. Society gets richer, in a sense. But the huge question is distribution. Who gets that wealth? AI could easily exacerbate the income inequality problem by making highly skilled workers even more productive, while maybe increasing competition and lowering wages for tasks that remain purely human. The benefits might flow disproportionately to the top. Agrawal even warns an AI-induced recession is not out of the question if the transition is handled badly.
But history does offer some comfort, right? Kurzweil's point about adaptation.
It does. Ford also notes that tech advancements tend to create new jobs eventually, echoing history. And Kurzweil's data is compelling. Over centuries, total jobs grow, working hours decrease, earnings rise in real terms. There's a historical pattern of adaptation and overall improvement, even if the transitions themselves are disruptive and painful for some. The big unknown is always the speed and fairness of this transition.
Okay, beyond the economy, what about the other ethical and societal challenges? Privacy seems like a big one.
Huge. Hendricks' warning about governments using AI for increased surveillance capacity is deeply concerning. The potential for democratic backsliding or totalitarianism, if this tech is used to monitor and control populations, is very real.
And the bias issue we talked about earlier that plays out in real decisions, right? Like college admissions.
Definitely. Khan uses admissions as an example. Using AI there forces us to confront the biases already in human processes. But it also offers a chance for improvement. AI systems can be audited for fairness across groups, potentially leading to more objective decisions than flawed human judgment, if designed and used carefully. It forces a hard look at existing systems.
Then there's the whole copyright mess. Who owns AI-generated content?
Oh yeah, that's a legal minefield right now. Narayan and Davis mentioned AI companies have all sorts of arguments against paying for the copyrighted stuff their models trained on. It raises fundamental questions about intellectual property. If an AI learns from millions of images or texts, who owns the output? We're really just starting to figure that out.
And what about just human interaction, especially with things like AI tutors?
That's a really valid concern Khan brings up. Could AI tutors lead to more impersonal learning? Reduce that crucial human interaction and personal relationships between teachers and students. There's a worry it could harm social and emotional development, even if the AI delivers facts efficiently. Teaching is so much more than just information transfer.
So looking back at history, can past tech shifts teach us anything useful here? You mentioned the calculator analogy.
It's such a great analogy from Malik.
Yeah.
He points out that when calculators first hit schools in the 70s, the fears were identical to AI fears today. Teachers worried students would become dependent on the technology and forget basic mathematical skills. A survey showed most teachers disapproved.
Doesn't that sound familiar?
Exactly. It shows this pattern. New tech arrives, there's fear about losing fundamental skills, then society adapts, integrates the tool, and focuses human effort on higher-level thinking. Calculators didn't destroy math skills, they changed how we teach and use math.
And we can even look inside AI's own history for parallels, right? Back to Minsky and Papert and the first perceptrons.
Absolutely. Their 1969 book, Perceptrons, wasn't just abstract critique. It was a rigorous mathematical takedown of what single-layer perceptrons couldn't do. Proving they couldn't recognize basic things like connectedness showed the limitations weren't just about needing more data or faster computers. The architecture was fundamentally flawed for certain tasks.
And that contributed directly to an AI winter.
Directly, it was a major factor. Funding dried up because the technology demonstrably couldn't live up to the initial hype. That disillusionment, like the expert system's crash later in the 80s, was a necessary, if painful, reality check. It forced researchers back to basics to figure out more powerful approaches, eventually leading to the multi-layer networks we use today. It highlights that progress often comes after confronting limitations. It's that cycle again. Hashtag tag tag outro one up.
What a ride. We've gone from the incredible optimism of early AI, Turing's vision, Minsky's groundwork, all the way to today's generative AI that leaves us in awe. But alongside that, we've seen this relentless pattern. The AI hype vortex, the snake oil, the moments where reality hits hard.
Absolutely. The bias baked into data, the staggering costs and computational limits, the sheer difficulty of scaling knowledge, like with the expert systems collapse in the 80s, and that huge, thorny alignment problem. These aren't new issues, they just reappear in new forms.
That expert systems winter in the late 80s really stands out as a clear example of the cycle, doesn't it? Skyrocketing costs, knowledge bases that just couldn't scale, results that didn't match the promises, leading straight to disillusionment and pulled funding.
It's a perfect illustration. It shows these aren't just minor bumps, they can be fundamental mismatches between ambition and capability that force a major rethink.
But like you said, these collapses or winters, they aren't usually the end of the story. They're more like necessary resets.
I think that's the right way to look at it. A crucial recalibration. Each period of disappointment forced researchers to really understand the limitations, go back to the drawing board, and ultimately pave the way for the next breakthrough. It reminds us progress here isn't smooth or guaranteed. It's messy, iterative, full of setbacks and hard-won lessons.
So what's the takeaway for you, our listener, living through this current intense AI moment?
I think it's about perspective, having that critical eye, being able to evaluate the claims, understand the real limits alongside the real potential, and push for responsible development. Don't just get swept up in the hype, but also don't dismiss the genuine progress. This history helps you navigate that middle ground, understand where the real challenges still lie.
Exactly. Maybe the key question isn't just what cool things can AI do next, because that answer changes constantly. Maybe it's what kind of future do we want to build with this technology? How do we keep human judgment, ethics, our values firmly in the driver's seat?
That's it. Instead of just accepting the future AI seems to offer, how do we actively shape it, ensuring it benefits everyone, not just a few?
The answers to those questions, they're probably more important than any single algorithm. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.